Riot Games is making a card game, and I know it's crazy that it took me this long to make this video because I've been traveling and all that stuff, but it is kind of funny that I've spent the last couple of years getting obsessed with Magic the Gathering to the extent that it's become a meme on my channels, and here they are making a physical card game. But you know what? Everybody got angry when they announced it. If you go look at the Reddit thread, it's filled with a ton of people saying a bunch of different stuff. So I'm gonna address some of the stuff that I saw there, and then also talk a little bit about why I think this is a smart idea, given that I think a lot of you might not be following the card game scene, so I can help kind of catch you up a little bit on it. This video does not have a sponsor, so please support the channel. Check the links below. There's ways to support me this holiday season. There's just not, there's not a lot going on in December, and so maybe you can help me by subbing or something. Anyway, let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is Legends of Runeterra. So that was by far and away, I think, the biggest thing that I saw in the subreddit thread, and also I think online the big reaction is, wow, Riot killed Legends of Runeterra for this. I can't believe they would just go shoot this card game in the head and then make a different card game. And I find it hilarious because I feel as though the people who say that type of thing really just want to be angry at Riot. But probably not people who played Legends of Runeterra. Maybe some of them are, but like the vast majority of them aren't. And this is a dramatic way for them to be like, yet another way that Riot Games has ruined everything. And I'm like, there's so many other things that we could be talking about in the world that are bad, and we're really angry about them making a card game after making a different card game. But let's talk about it. Let's just, in good faith, pretend that that's what everybody is actually upset about. So Legends of Runeterra, I played a ton of when it got announced. In fact, it's crazy because I had heard of this game going all the way back to, I think, maybe 2012. It was codenamed Project Bacon at the time. There's a whole video that I got interviewed for that I will put up here or somewhere, and then maybe also link it, I don't know. And in that we talk a little bit about how and why Legends of Runeterra died, right? You should say died like this every time you say it with quotation marks with your fingers, because it's actually still alive. You can go play it right now. They switched over to mostly supporting it as a PvE title, like a thing where you're playing this roguelike type thing, which I think is smart, because the unfortunate reality, and the short of it is that Legends of Runeterra died for a couple different reasons. One of which I think is the biggest is that for digital card games, people have moved from playing these build a deck and play against other people type things to mostly playing these roguelikes. I mean, we just saw Balatro was nominated for Game of the Year at the Game Awards, and I've been playing a ton of that. But before then, there was obviously Slay the Spire. There's all these different things, and a lot of these games have moved to having PvE elements to them. One of the few that hasn't is actually Magic the Gathering in terms of Magic the Gathering Arena. They don't have something like that. Honestly, they probably should build something like that. But it's kind of where digital card games have gone. I think part of that is because you can move at instant speed. It's in like, you don't need to wait for your opponent to make their decision, which happens a ton to me whenever I'm playing Arena, Magic the Gathering Arena, I should say. And it lets you have these kind of higher highs and less low lows in terms of the gameplay. So it just works better in digital. So Legend of Runeterra didn't die because of this card game at all. It was already dead. And I think there's been some discussion also about whether or not they were too generous with the monetization, which I think is, I don't know if that's true or not, but maybe there's some element of that. And I think it's hilarious that the community is in a place where they're frustrated with Riot around monetizing stuff, but also then they made this card game where it was like the most generous card game ever, and here they are. So I feel like Riot gave Legends of Runeterra a real chance, and it just didn't work, and so here we are. So now we arrive at the point where, all right, Legend of Runeterra is not going to be it. Should you just never make a card game again because you made a card game and it would be disrespectful to the memory of that digital card game? Like it is very funny to me that people seem to have some sort of sentimental, we must honor the memory of this game that has died by never replacing it, It's just very absurd to me. People replace their cat like 6 weeks after the other one dies, so I don't know what's going on with that. So let's talk about what's going on in physical card games and why I think that it is very sensical for them to do this. physical card games are popping off. As much as you'll talk to enfranchised Magic the Gathering players and they'll be like, oh, Wizards has killed Magic the Gathering. It is breaking all records right now in terms of sales, and they're releasing sets that are doing better than ever, and they are just pumping money. They're like the sole thing that is holding Hasbro afloat. At least that's kind of the general consensus. And on the other hand, you also have a ton of other games that are popping off. So folks might have heard of Lorcana, which is a Disney card game that has done really well and for a while was difficult to find in stores. There's a Star Wars one. There is One Piece, which is popping off hard right now. So many people go and play One Piece. And I think what's fascinating about the One Piece card game is that a ton of people who have never watched One Piece or are not affiliated with the IP really like the card game. So it's just a good time to be making a collectible card game. And I think that is why this is a market in which Riot can do well. Now, ironically, I do think there's a world where we might see this card game, if it becomes really successful, get a digital component, because Magic the Gathering Arena, like basically the only reason I play Magic the Gathering Arena, and I think for a lot of people, the reason why they play it is because it helps them get better at the game elsewhere. Like I like to draft on Arena before I'm gonna go to a draft in person at a card shop or something like that, because I learn it a little bit better. I understand what all the cards do, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's a world where we could see maybe even using the lore or LOR Runeterra client, building something in it where these cards kind of come through. I think that could make a lot of sense. I think it's obvious when you see somebody who's not played Legends of Runeterra talk about this, because they will sometimes be like, it's crazy that there's no way they could even like link this in or make these card games work together or just do a physical version of Legends of Runeterra. It's like, okay, if you've played that game, there are a ton of mechanics that don't work in physical versions of this game that you would need a computer or something to be able to handle. So that is not practical. The other thing that is huge in in-person card games are these, what people in the card game space call them multiplayer formats. Which is so funny because 1v1 is a multiplayer format, but when they say multiplayer, they usually mean like a 4-person format. So in Magic the Gathering, you have Commander, which is a 4-person free-for-all. I always call it like the ARAM of Magic the Gathering, because it is fairly casual for most games that people play, and it's much more randomized, and anything can kind of happen. That is why a lot of people like it. It feels much more like a board game that you're playing with friends, but that you get to be kind of a quarter of the designer. So those are popping off hard. Like Commander's is going really, really hard, and it has been for quite some time. And I know from talking to people who play this game in Macau that they are basically building that into the base level of the engine for the League of Legends card game, Project K. And from what I understand, you can either play 1v1, you can play 2v2, or you can play 1v1, v1, v1. So I think it's really smart that they are capitalizing on the popularity of Commander and basically being like, hey, here's another card game where this could end up doing really well. I also think it's not a bad time to make a card game, because if it can stick, I do think people in other card games, especially Magic the Gathering, are getting fatigued, are getting tired, are getting frustrated, and you can perhaps present the alternative gameplay opportunity, right? Like maybe they could be like, hey, we're a little bit more affordable in terms of card game, or maybe we have less power creep than Magic the Gathering. Now, I will say I thought all this before Legends of Runeterra came out about Hearthstone, which I thought was incredibly predatory in their monetization and costs a ton to be able to play. And clearly Hearthstone is still standing while Legends of Runeterra isn't. So we'll see what ends up happening there. But yeah, I just think overall it's a good time to make the bet on a physical card game. And I know a lot of people say like, oh yeah, but the market is so saturated. I think to me, saturated sounds as though there's like 15 card games and half of them are dying, when in reality, just people keep making card games and then they keep finding some measure of success in most places, unless it's like a tiny little indie studio putting something out. So I think that this makes a lot of sense. There's going to be a lot of people who like the IP after Arcane Seasons 1 and 2, and so it could end up being really neat. two reasons why it might not end up happening in terms of being successful. One, it seems as though a lot of the criticism is about the art, and that is actually something that I can't comment on. Like, art is very subjective. I think they're going to probably use a lot of the art from Legends of Runeterra, which one makes it much more affordable for them to make this stuff, at least until they run out of Legends of Runeterra art. But two, I think a lot of that art is very good. It seems to me that people, when they criticize the art that we've seen from Project K so far, are more frustrated with the design of the cards in terms of the way that it looks. There's like a white border, which people don't find as nice as a black border on cards. It's very like, for those that don't play card games, I know it's weird, but I think a lot of people are accustomed to a certain look or visual appearance for a lot of their card games, and they feel like Project K looks more like a board game type card game versus something that is like a collectible thing. That, I think Riot will have to figure out. In my opinion, they should just release the first set as like beta, Project K beta, or whatever they end up calling it, Heroes of Runeterra beta. And I think that would allow them to make a bunch of changes later on and also create a lot of collectability around that first set, because maybe there are going to be versions of the cards that we'll never see again in terms of the way that they're designed. It's very common in card games to create like a beta version of it. But I also do think that they should figure out ways to increase the art. But maybe that just won't stick. The other reason that this could flop is just maybe people don't like it. Maybe it's not fun. I don't want people to come out and be like, oh, Travis went so hard in defense of this game and obviously it flopped right out of the gate, because like, I'm not going so hard in defense of the game. I am only defending Riot's decision to make a card game after Legends of Runeterra, and to make a physical card game at a time where like physical card games are doing really well. I think it's a good time to be making one. So I just wanted to push back a little bit on some of the criticism and stuff from the community around their decision to make this game. I hope it's really good. I hope it's really cool. I hope that they're not charging $300 for a collector booster box like Magic the Gathering does, and that it will still feel collectible and neat. So I'm definitely going to play it. We'll give some more impressions on the channel. It does feel as though while everyone is talking about esports, especially North America, struggling, and I've gone super hard into Magic the Gathering, Riot being like, and now we're making a physical card game. It's unlikely this will happen, but it would be very funny if 5 years from now this was just a Project K YouTube channel. It's just hilarious how everything's coming together. David Shynock made a funny meme about this. Anyway, we'll do Project K coverage, and then next year we'll talk about esports again. So don't worry, esports is not going anywhere from this channel. Have a happy holiday.